On that note, uh, that's today's terrible dad joke. Jenny, over to you to kick us off. It is 8:01.
We are there. Definitely not trying to follow that. Good morning, everybody. Welcome. Excuse me. For those of you who might be new to our Friday mornings, quick note to the Zoom tools available to you. You'll have seen the chat. It is taking off already. Please feel free to use it. There's also a Q&A, and I think that's going to be really important this morning. If you have a question, pop it in that Q&A section. You can choose to be anonymous if you wish to, and Craig will follow those closely to make sure that we can answer as many as possible. But before we dig into all things AI and leadership, we'll just take a moment to recognize where we're coming from today. So, SAID's main campus, and I believe the three of us are all joining you from Calgary, which is located on the traditional territories of the Blackfoot and the people of the Treaty 7, which includes the Siksika, the Piikani, the Kainai, the Tsuut'ina, and the Îyârhe Nakoda of Bearspaw, Chiniki, and Goodstoney. Our area an area of the Blackfoot tribes traditionally called Mokintas. Mokintas means the meeting of two rivers, the Bow and the Elbow. We now refer to it as the city of Calgary, and it's also home to the Métis Nation of Alberta. Thank you, Craig.
Perfect. Thank you, Jenny. And yes, we have Kwame. Kwame is sad to be back with us today. Kwame from Brain Toy. He's the CEO of Brain Toy. Uh, one of Calgary's. I'm gonna go out there, Kwame, and say one of Calgary's leading AI companies, and also a tremendous resource to SAIT in terms of helping us develop and working with us on a number of AI programs that I am sure folks will want to know about by the end of this session. But AI, it is everywhere and seemingly changing on a daily basis. And I think the fortunate thing that we're going to have in this discussion today, folks, is that we have Kwame here who can really help cut through that AI noise. What's real, what's productive, what is, how can businesses really leverage AI to enhance productivity, to help employees achieve more, et cetera. And as always, we've got Jenny that can provide, as she likes to say, all the stuff that's not numbers and hard stuff, right?
Nothing sense.
It's probably the harder stuff. How do you help people adapt? How do you help people change? How do you help leaders work through all of this? Because, I saw an article earlier this week that I'd shared with Jenny around the rising anxiety associated in the workplace with AI coming in. So I think there's two questions that I can kick this off with. One to Kwame, I'll start there.
Okay.
And that Kwame, it's that I think there's organizations and leaders really feeling the pressure to do something with AI,
hmm
but they really don't know what that means. And so, what does it mean? And maybe what are some of the big misunderstandings you see from organizations when they start down this journey? And then I'll go to the people side with Jenny. So, Kwame.
Yeah. So to your point, AI is not a mystery anymore. But in fact, I've begun to think of it as a mirror because it reflects exactly how willing we are, whether to experiment, to learn and to adapt. And I think that's what's lacking because leaders, it's not as if they don't know about AI. They do know that it exists, but it's like what I see from leaders is they're either chasing the shiny new toy or they're waiting for the perfect moment to act. And that perfect moment will never come. And because they're waiting for a perfect moment to act, that is why they also need a perfect playbook.
Mm,
And that also never works. What we really need is bold leaders who are willing to take action. And so leaders are not failing, they're not falling behind on AI just because they lack the skill, they lack the data, they lack the playbook. I think they're falling behind because they lack the courage and the imagination. Excuse me, they lack the courage and even the imagination to begin to start. So that's what I think. there are a lot of myth about it, and maybe you can talk we can talk about some of those myths around adopting AI later.
Mm.
Absolutely. I love that. And I think we will certainly get to there. And I think Jenny, um, so maybe just kind of building on this a little bit from the people side, although I have to admit I'm a little taken aback that I was hearing about bold and courage from Kwame, the tech guy on this call, right? It's
Because
not
I've been
exactly what
through this, I've seen the
I love
technology,
it.
and but what I've seen over the years is it's more or less about the technology than, the attitude of the people.
Perfect.
Yeah. And it's the attitude of the people that drives the behavior. So I loved what you said there, our willingness to experiment. I wrote them down, experiment to learn and to adapt. And that mirror piece, what a great reframe. And immediately, if we want to go down the people route, we're looking at that psychological safety piece. Those of you who join us regularly know it's a topic that comes up nearly every week. But how willing are we for it to go wrong? How willing are we for the experiment not to quite go the way that we want it to go? And I wonder too, I don't know this, but I wonder if there's a bit of fear. What if it goes really right? What if this is suddenly amazing? And I think that fear, we hear it all the time, is that fear that, well, the AI is going to replace me. Like talk about the biggest myth ever. We're all going to be replaced by AI.
Yeah.
And we know that the story is far better served. Well, how can AI support us and enable us? I can think of five things off the top of my head. If I could get AI to do it for me, thank goodness I don't have to do that. And yes, Craig, they're all to do with numbers and sensible things. Like just let something take care of it that can. So I really like that idea of are we willing to step in and learn, which for leaders means that experiment word becomes crucial. How do we do that appropriately, I think?
Yeah. And I like that you talk about the psychological aspect of it, because I think it also connects to culture.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
uh, in fact, the adoption, in my opinion, is about 90% psychology and 10% techno or syntax, if you will, or technology. Uh, People don't fear the tool, they fear becoming obsolete.
Yes.
That's actually the fear. That's why, is it going to replace me? Is always the question that people will ask.
Yeah.
And so for leaders, the best way to introduce AI is that we don't make it feel like a test. We
Yes.
make it look like a toy that we can play with. Children, they get a toy, they're so excited, and then they play with it because when a tool makes people feel smart, they use it. But then when it makes them feel that they are, sorry to use the word, the only word that comes to mind is stupid, then they avoid it,
Yeah. No,
right?
that's fair.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So the best AI cultures hasn't built on use policy, I believe. They're built on psychological permission to explore, right?
Mm.
So give people that permission, make it easier on them. Uh, Let them feel as if they're part of, there's a symbiotic relationship between them and the tool. And so if we make room for play, then we'll also make room for innovation.
I like that. And I think within that comes that whole sharing piece. So for a
Hmm.
leader, it doesn't all rest on you. So you have a team, right? That's the
Agree.
whole piece. Where's the conversation? And what are we learning? So if we were to make it a regular part of our cadence of conversation, where's it supported you? Where did you fall down flat? Like I was trying to do something the other day. I'd read somewhere about, okay, get your co-pilot or whatever it is that you're using to help you create a brief or a report. And I'm like, oh, that's genius.
Hmm.
That would save me a ton of time. So I'm putting in what I think are all the brilliant prompts and everything else. And it seems to be all set up. And then I cannot get this thing to get sent to me every single day. If, and that's just a tiny weeny example, but if that's happening on a team and a team is meeting to talk about that, imagine how much speed and how much traction we could get through learning together. And there's the learning part. And the learning part doesn't come naturally if we're in that fear circle. So I really like that idea of learning and the conversation and how it supports us.
Yeah, I agree. I like that example you gave. It's simple, but it works. Most of the time when we think about AI and the adoption of AI, we think that AI only matters when it's doing something extraordinary.
Hmm.
But that's not the case. The real win often comes from doing something painfully ordinary, something more reliable without complaint. And so that example you gave is a classic example of creating something that is useful, that saves time, that makes people feel that they are utilizing a tool to create value and to solve meaningful problems. That's it.
Yeah.
Cool.
Um,
Oh, sorry, I'm going to jump in here. I've got half a page of notes already taken, so Kwame will be talking after the session as well. Um, but so there's a couple things. One, you mentioned myths. I think there's a piece in here around fear. I'm seeing some comments in the chat about, it's fear of the unknown, et cetera. We do have a couple questions I think that can help guide the next part of the conversation as well. But so let's talk about some of those myths. We touched on one, right? Sorry, I think it's part myth, part reality.
mhm.
AI is going to replace some jobs. I think
True.
Very
true,
true.
right?
Yeah.
AI is not going to replace every job. Learning how to use AI is going to help you ensure you have continued employment depending on where you're at. Like obviously, there's some roles that AI just is not going to touch. I don't see a plumber in here using ChatGPT to fix my leaky faucet, right? But what are those other myths that you've seen that so when you're working with organizations, what are the pieces that you see them being afraid of or being those myths that you just go, you don't have to worry about that?
Yeah, I think it's one of the things that Jenny touched on. Is that it has to create this, it has to be super extraordinary. And we have all these pie in the sky ideas that we think AI should solve, as opposed to looking at some of the daily routine stuff that we actually embark on. Think of education, for example. Maybe you have a 90-page HR and student policy manual. Nobody reads. I know I wouldn't read it. Um, but it's as simple as maybe turning it into a generative AI chatbot. And what
Mhm.
that does is that now students begin to interact with it. The administrative staff begin to also interact with it. Students perhaps use it to understand their rights. AI, HR will stop, playing what I call the email ping pong. Um, and it's going to save time. People are going to see value, and that's just it. So when we see it as that's one of the myths is that it has to be extraordinary. Then we have to also get extraordinary budget, get an extraordinary team, have an extraordinary use case and something that will increase our profits extraordinarily.
That was good. That was good.
Right? And that doesn't work.
No.
Yeah. So that's one of the myths. The other one you mentioned is the fear, and this I see everywhere.
Mhm.
Um, the fear of using this tool, and it's less about using the tool, and more about feeling replaced,
Yeah.
and that's just it. And if we can frame it as something that empowers us, something that gives us superpowers, something that we work with and we use it, then that fear really goes down. And leaders who have tried that have always been successful. In my slides, when we get there, there's a quote from Yannick, the Minister of Technology and Education, and I got that quote from him at the SAIT AI Summit, is it last week or 2 weeks ago,
Yeah.
where he says that they're taking a human-centric approach to adopting AI. And the moment they do that, the fear goes down.
Yeah. And I think too, like the minute we talk human, we have two choices, and leaders can help with this. The first one is really in how we see it. So when we act in threat and resistance, it's happening to us, right? So AI is happening to us. AI is coming. AI is going to do this. That
Mhm.
is a very threatening environment for a lot of people. But the alternative is AI is happening with us or by us. And so, to your point, Kwame, how will we work together with this extra piece that can help us. And it's long gone now in the chat, but there was an interesting, even if it gets us, I think the chat comment said 90%, even if it helps us to get a little bit further, a little bit faster, we're enhanced in what we can do. So there's that I like thinking of it almost as a catalyst. Um,
Yes.
and in the very simple versions I've used it, it's it's been great when it's been a catalyst. It has hallucinated to me. It has completely created myth itself. And so, I also want to think one of the other myths that pops up is we're going to lose all of our creative thinking and all of our ability to do
Yeah.
this by ourselves. And this isn't the time for the rabbit hole of will kids still be able to research and think for themselves and all the rest. So we have to do some work in that. How do we stand with it, not under it?
Yeah. I
Mhm.
think the other myth, and Jenny, you alluded to it, is also about governance. You know,
Mm-hmm.
when people think of using AI, yes, it hallucinates at times. It can give you confident lies. Uh, there are biases, hidden in pretty sentences. Um, but then we made a mistake, and then we say, okay, let's ban it, just because it
Yeah.
hallucinated, right? Or we panic, and then if it's not perfect, then it doesn't work. But
Yeah.
in fact, you don't ban knives in the kitchen. You train the chef how to use it. You don't expect the knives to even choose the recipes. So AI now becomes a tool. It's like a
Cool.
sharp tool,
Yeah.
right? And then we can say governance is your cutting board. As Craig, you've seen, we always call our platform AI Kitchen. We like talking about food in relation to
Yep.
AI all the time. So, so I think that governance tightrope is also a myth, because responsible AI isn't about perfection. No, it's about being intentional about the design, having clarity around data oversight and even escalations. Those are the things that really work when it comes to governance, as opposed to just
Yeah.
banning and getting rid
Hmm.
of the tool.
Yeah. And you wouldn't there's obviously some very basic things that you do have to worry about data security and what you are inputting
Yes.
into certain models. And I think that's um, quickly starting to become some user table stakes, if you want to put it that way, that you really need to be smart about what you're uploading and how you're doing that. And that's, I think, the governance piece that, especially when you get into larger organizations, you really start to get some uh, pieces about like that. There's the doomsday scenarios that could come out in there. You hear stories about agentic AI running over the weekend and wiping out the database or whatever it might be, right? There's those pieces. But something you said there, just because AI is underwhelming or you're not getting the results out of it or you have an error, you don't necessarily ban the tool. You wouldn't do the same thing with an employee. Yes, if they
No.
keep doing it over and over and over, but why would you immediately expect. And I think that's the hype around AI that has led us to believe there should be these, just to your earlier words, extraordinary
Hmm.
results, right? So I want to get to a couple of questions here, and I think they can um, somewhat tie together. So one question is, can you speak to successes with AI? Right? Not everything's doom and gloom, right? We've kind of focused on the myth and what could go wrong here. So some examples of AI successes, maybe don't need a ton. And then I think that leads into, we want folks want to be able to generate those successes in their companies. And the question here is, how can leaders be bold and take action when they don't have the support, knowledge, or resources in their organizations to do so? Right. So if you're somebody starting out on their AI journey with their company, whether it's an individual contributor or whether you're a small organization, um, how can you be bold if you don't know or if you don't have the support? So AI successes and then tips on how to start being bold.
Yeah. Okay. So there are so many successes around AI, even in Calgary. Um, Most of the telecommunication companies that I know of here, at the very least, have a customer churn model. That's a machine learning model that they've built that predicts which customers are potential flight risk and why. And in most cases, it's helped them to proactively reach out to some of these customers because And you may have gotten an email like or a phone call like that. Hey, we're just calling to check on you. You know, maybe there's a potential that you're going to stop using the service. You know, it costs them about 5 to 10 times more to acquire a new customer than to retain an existing one. And so when they retain you, they save millions of dollars each year. And so a very simple customer churn model has been very, very useful to banks, to telecommunication or organizations that basically sell to customers. In the construction industry, as an example, one company also in Calgary was struggling with managing signed contracts, and subcontractors would always say, "Oh, I never got that." And so what they did is that they also, in fact, in this case, they used a generative AI and they tracked acknowledgements simply. You know, they answered questions and reminded people politely. It's basically like a digital side clerk, you know, and it never get tired. And they also put rails around it, so it's never sarcastic. And so suddenly what happens is that now projects are moving faster, not because AI was clever, but because it was simply consistent. Right. Uh, there's also an example. I mentioned education, you know, with the HR policy as an example. And companies have begun using some of those, creating bots as even onboarding tools.
Mm.
Hmm.
A new team member joins, and this is where you go to ask questions. This is where you find all the information. We do have a lot of intranets, right? Intranet
Mhm.
website. Every department has an intranet website, and they dump all this information there, and they expect people to go there and read. Well, there are 50 pages, 100, sometimes maybe 1,000 pages, and it's so difficult for them to. They've begun scraping and putting them simply in chats, and so people now can just ask questions and they're getting results. And this cuts across e- every department, every organization. Um,
Yeah,
Supply chain, as an example, a transformation firm, again, that we know of, they built a generative AI model, solution. It was an assistant, and it was trained on all their historical delivery and routing decisions. And so now, when the dispatchers go in, they ask a question, what went wrong in the last time we tried this route, as an example? And then they get context in seconds. It's not about dashboards, there's no training, they just chatted, and it's been very useful.
perfect. So lots of great out there.
Yeah.
Now, how do you start? That's essentially, I think, what the other question was asking, right?
Yeah,
How do you start? And we've talked
I
about,
would.
make it safe to play, make it safe to test. But how can leaders be bold and take action when they don't have the support, knowledge, or resources in their organizations to do so?
Yeah. So to start, I would say start small. Mm, Most times we want to really start big and start small. To that point, I also want to say something that I think maybe we've discussed previously is we say I'm really forward thinking, but my company is not.
Yeah.
We make up the company. We're
Yeah,
individuals.
true.
So in my own small corner, how am I showing that I am forward thinking, even though I don't have the support of this organization? There are a ton of training out there offered by organizations, including SAID. Have I taken one of them? Um, the desire to join this webinar, I think, is a great start. So this is you showing that you are proactively trying to seek the knowledge and the skills and the way to learn and to begin. Um, and then define a simple use case, something very small but meaningful. And then you can start with it. Maybe you can even, if your organization will not allow you to do it, you can you can use now generative AI, even ChatGPT, to generate synthetic scenarios, create something around that use case. Now go and show the potential value and you might get the buy-in. So start something really small that can give you meaningful outcomes that is also measurable in your own small corner. If you need help, get an outside consultant to come in, scope it really small, get tiny wins, and that's how you begin to get them on board. And when you show the wins and you also get everybody involved, like we mentioned earlier on, uh, give people the permission to play and to explore, right? And you don't make it feel as if, oh, I have this this magical tool in my box and I own it. No, you bring everybody on board and you all explore together and you all use it. Then you all share in the win. Then they don't feel a risk. They don't feel that they are at risk of being let go because of that tool that you're bringing in. No, they feel that they're being empowered because of this tool. So I guess the short answer is to be bold, start small in your own corner, um, educate yourself, try and solve a simple, meaningful problem that creates value, showcase it in your organization, get people involved, and then continue the conversation from there. That's how I've seen people win.
Cool. Jenny, anything to add in there from the?
No, I love it. I think it's, but I think the key is the sharing part in there.
Yeah.
And so that, you know, leader responsibility, press pause. What are we learning? What are we knowing? What have we been playing with? And, you know, we don't have resources, etc., etc. There's a term used, what's your 15% solution? And so, you know, to Kwame's point, these are tiny uses. We're not solving the world. They're not, what was the word earlier? Extraordinary. But we don't need permission to make a 15% difference. We don't need permission to run it as an enhance or as a catalyst, or let's just see if this works or not. What we do need is we need support. And so that if it doesn't quite work, the support is there in the conversation. Do we know anyone who can help us? Or maybe I've learned this, let's try that. And that's that sort of scaffolded learning, even in the conversation. There's a term to scaffolding in the chat with education, but even in our conversation, we can do that for each other.
Perfect. Yeah, and I think the other thing too that I should probably add in here is that absolutely start small. Make sure you're following your company's IT policies before you start going a little. Even small at some companies might be huge at others. I would just add that there.
Mhm.
True.
So a couple other questions that have come in here. How can you determine if the tools that you're using for staff to learn more about AI are going to assist staff in using AI in a safe way? So I guess how do you validate the AI teaching tools that you're using? I think the key thing that I've seen come through here a lot, Kwame, is how are we keeping our data safe? How are we making sure this is safe to play and test with?
Yeah, I think IT has that covered in most organizations.
Yeah.
Yeah, how are you keeping your data safe now? Those policies are there, those guardrails are there, the security measures are there. Um, and so I think that is covered already. Um, Now, when we go back to governance, when we mention, clarity about data usage and oversight, this is where even that there are data governance policies again in place in most organizations that have already taken care of this. The problem is now bringing in the tool. The moment they hear AI, then all of a sudden we don't have these policies anymore. There are data quality issues that exist that we don't know. There's no oversight anymore. I think so. That mindset, if we can get rid of it, will be really good. Now, of course, you don't want people to, for instance, upload your data into ChatGPT, but I don't know which organizations people on the call are from, but Copilot has been the conversation, and most organizations have actually subscribed to this, and it's in their it's in their own infrastructure, which IT has subscribed to, right? And so if you're bold enough to just try, it just takes an email asking IT, hey, is this in our own firewall secured by our own security protocols? Can I upload, for instance, a document? You might get once you get a yes, then just try.
Yeah.
The only twist I would put on this question, so clearly we're at SATE, we've got a huge IT department that does fantastic work. Lots of other folks on the call here probably have IT departments as well. What if you're at an organization that's small enough that you don't have quote unquote the IT department? What do you recommend there? Right? Because
Yeah.
there are I can guarantee there are folks that have joined us that don't have the IT department.
Yeah, true. And if you don't have an IT department, then it's because you know the secret sources in your company. You know what confidential information is. I'll tell you something I personally have done. Sometimes I'm just writing, for instance, my son, in his school, and I want to write a long email, and I really want it to be arranged nicely. I don't put my son's name in it. I just put XXX. I don't put the teacher's name in it. I just put like YYY. So this is me just trying to generate some information that is useful to me, but you know, masking some of the information that I wouldn't want to be put out there. So if I don't have um, an IT department, then it means that I have autonomy to actually play more. But I also just have to be aware of confidential information and the
Absolutely.
need to make sure that it stays confidential in my organization without putting that on the internet.
Mm.
Perfect. Okay. Another question here, and I think it's going to be good for both of you. How would you approach a conversation with an organization that is against generative AI because they're concerned that employees would not be using their own knowledge and understanding to complete tasks or projects?
Yeah. My own knowledge and understanding. Where did I get the knowledge from? I read
Yeah.
it, I studied it, I went to a webinar. That's where I got the knowledge from. Generative AI has been trained on the things I read, the things I studied. Um, sorry, Jenny, you can speak.
No, I
Yeah.
have the same. It's funny how the minute we talk about something that's artificial, we suddenly assume that humans are not quite as capable as we know that we are. Um, if the companies, if that's what's cascading down, it's a tough conversation. I think it actually comes back to what Kwame said beforehand. What are the small, good use cases where you can show that this is enabling, enhancing, as opposed to reducing and removing? And when we're talking about things even like Copilot, for example, you can't just let it run and do its thing. Like it's artificial. You have to look at it. My favorite example, I asked it, I wanted a number for something. Don't raise too many eyebrows, Craig. And it was for, for some weight to something that I was going to talk about. And I think it was Copilot spat back at me this 2017 Michigan study. And in me, I could have just taken that and I'm like, oh, that's curious. And I always want to read more about this study. So I asked for the specific citation and it said, I can't give you one. And I
Hmm.
said, so did you make that up? Literally, my prompt, I'm in conversation with the computer. And it goes, yes, I did. Right? So it, the human is involved. The human is a part of this. Is an enabler and enhancer. Go small, show the use. Think of those 15% solutions, I think.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think it also, sorry,
No, go ahead.
it also goes back to what Jenny mentioned earlier on, where people think that it's going to stifle creativity.
Mm,
Um, we're no longer going to be smart. But that has not been the case in history. When the calculator came, people thought the same thing.
yeah.
We're still smart. When the computer came, people thought the same thing. So historically, that has never been the case. And so this tool is just, enhancing our superpowers, so to speak. And so if they say that show your own knowledge, you always have to acquire knowledge.
Yeah.
And this tool has been trained with some of those knowledge and it can help you. But maybe in that case, it goes back to Jenny's point is that, let's show a win, show a small win. Uh, do something really small, show it to your executives about the power of this tool in enhancing either, I don't know, increasing profit or saving time or reducing cost in some way, shape, or form. And then they can see the benefits and it might be easier to get them on board.
I
Yeah.
think too, sorry, Craig, I think too is
No.
that sort of influence pieces with those benefits, especially in leadership at the moment, like everybody is at capacity. So if you can find ways to get those small wins so that you can focus on what's important that does require your input, your intelligence, your starting point, that's a win for the company because now we're
Hmm.
focusing on the really important things rather than just the stuff that's making us busy. And
Absolutely.
and as we, hopefully we lose that addiction with busy and focus more on the important, this is where that can help us.
Absolutely. A couple comments. I was Keith and Tara, you beat me to it. Yes, trust but verify,
Mhm, mhm.
right?
Hmm.
101. And using new tools to become more efficient shouldn't be looked at as a bad thing, right? It's
Yeah.
exactly what you were just speaking to there, Jenny, is if you can use this, and I'll go back to Kwame's point earlier, to help you with the ordinary and not worry about extraordinary, it frees up your time to actually work on the extraordinary.
Yeah.
How's that? You like that? You like that
Yeah,
too?
Yeah, I
I
do.
do.
I
Yeah,
do.
there you
Yeah.
go.
Yeah.
I had to contribute something this morning. Um, so another question here. I think maybe one or two more before we can start looking at wrapping up. How can we reframe the narrative around AI from replacing human intelligence to augmenting it, given historic examples where new technologies enhanced rather than diminished our capabilities? Is the answer to start small?
Yes, and, that is part of the answer. In fact, I just opened so, and I posted this on LinkedIn. Yannick Alford, the Minister of Technology, and this is exactly what he said. He said, um, when we position AI as a superpower we want to give our staff, the fear levels go down, the confidence starts to come up, and we start to unlock things we never even imagined. This is
Mhm.
his quote, and he's in public service,
Yeah.
right? So when we actually let people know that this is just enhancing you, this is supporting you, this is helping you to do things that would have taken 3 hours to be able to do it maybe in less than 30 minutes. And then you will free up your time to be able to do more and to create more value, to work on things that are even more fulfilling, and to also let them know that you can never take the human out of the loop. Then it's very easy for us to actually get them on board.
Yeah. I think the answer is in the question. Like, let's just change the conversation. What if we did reframe it? And anybody can step into that. When you start to hear, that it's almost fear mongering. It well, what if it doesn't? What if we work alongside it? What if we use it? Come back to what you said, Craig. What if we use it to be efficient so we can be effective?
Yeah. Yeah. And I threw Kwame, I quickly found your LinkedIn post and I put a link to it in the chat there. So
Perfect.
Okay.
there you go. Um, but I think, one other, I'm going to come back to because there's one more question here I think that we could probably talk a little bit about. It's framed more in the concept of prompting, like how do you prompt, what prompts can be used to keep LLMs less biased, asking for references. But maybe there's just a bigger conversation here around bias within AI tools. And Jenny, I know you've always got some great thoughts around all the biases that we can bring into our daily lives. My most favorite is the recency bias because I just learned about it. But um,
That's two dad jokes in one morning,
yeah,
Craig.
I know. Yeah.
Kami, come on. Give us something real here.
So yeah, Kwame, over to you about just bias built into the models, or how do you try and avoid that?
Yeah, so there are two ways. If the bias is built into the underlying model you're using, that you probably don't have control over. But most of these companies have really invested. Although there are a lot of models around, there are maybe top three, from maybe Chat OpenAI and Claude and Perplexity. These are the popular ones that we're all using, and their reputation is important to them. So they've invested a lot in making sure that some of these biases don't exist. Now, the biases might come from or may be introduced by the user interacting with these solutions. And so I think there is a new course coming soon about prompt engineering. And this is we can talk about this for days actually, but simple things as telling it to exclude so and so. generate maybe this report, but do not include so and so.
Uh,
You trying to set boundaries around it, uh, trying to tell it where to focus, perhaps giving it a narrowed scope. And this is why I believe the next best skill is being able to communicate orally and being able to really write well, because this is how we're going to interact with these. So being able to really give it a scope and telling it what to include and what not to include, giving it restrictions in your prompt is a way that you can reduce biases. The other thing is also you can put the models against itself. You can challenge
mm,
itself. One of the things, easy things you can ask is, are you happy with this? Are you satisfied with this? Or would you make adjustments? And it will just check itself and come back and say, oh, I will make so and so and so adjustment. And you just say, okay, go back and update it. And that really works too.
yeah. And I think you have to recognize too that in the nature of writing your prompt, you're going to bring your own bias into creating that prompt. So, Jenny, I don't know if you've got any thoughts on how we check our own biases before we transition to wrap things up today.
I think just run in line with what Kwame said. We are biased.
Yeah,
We used to call them unconscious, but now we talk about them all the time. So they're definitely conscious. We're there, and if you're using AI, you can use it to help yourself. What may I not have thought of? Where would you challenge this perspective? And just for note too, I love what Kwame just said. I constantly do that when I'm using an AI tool is, do you think this is the best version? Or, if you were to give yourself a better prompt for this exercise, what would you have written? It's prompts are like this big and I've been this big. Okay, so you learn from that too, which helps you to prompt better next time. We are back in the space of learning, which is maybe why it's so uncomfortable for us all. We thought we were done learning, and we're
yeah,
really
Yeah.
not.
yeah.
And the other thing also, even with, yes, better prompting, biases, hallucination, if we walk out of this room, we go stand outside and we come up with a question that has no answer. If we ask 10 people, maybe six people will give us an answer. This is who
Very
we
good.
are. Or maybe eight people will give us an answer. We hallucinate all the time. We lie all the time. Um, we
We
want to
do.
sound smart all the time.
Yes.
And this is what has been baked into some of these models. So the moment we understand that this is potentially a feature of them, then we also think twice in our communication or in our interaction with them. And that really influences the way we prompt and the kind of questions we ask, and even fact checking the responses we get.
Very good. And while I have a bias to carry on this conversation, I am not hallucinating that it is time to wrap it up. It's about 8:45. So I think Jenny usually shares a big idea, a couple strategies and questions, but Kwame is doing so today. Jenny's running the slides for us. So Kwame, over to you to kind of take us through your final thoughts.
Yeah, thank you. And I think this particular slide talks about the things we have discussed,
Mhm.
already, right? Because um, I believe, like I said, AI hasn't really created new fears. It's simply exposed the ones that we were already nursing quietly in the corners of our organization. We are afraid of fear of not being able to keep up, fear of being replaced, fear of, looking not looking smart or looking foolish in front of a dashboard that knows more than we do. Um, but AI, in my opinion, is less of, let's use the word robot invasion, and more of a leadership MRI now. It's revealing how healthy or brittle our culture already is, and how we ourselves feel about embracing emerging technology. It's not about coding, as we've mentioned, it's about courage, right? So AI really works best, not when it's imposed, but when it's offered like a gift, in my opinion, an opportunity to amplify what humans are already brilliant at doing. So that's basically what this is about. So always reframe AI as a superpower. And Craig, thank you for posting that post in the chat. Go look at it. It has Yannick's quote was so profound that we had to post it on our page. Framing AI as a superpower. and making sure that you take a human-centric approach. Jenny.
I think I've done it already. Sorry, Kwame.
Okay. Yeah. So the two leadership strategies that I wanted to talk about today is normalizing exploration and then anchoring AI to purpose, not just productivity. Normalizing exploration, I like to use this analogy. If AI is a jungle, don't act like the map maker. Be the tour guide who says, "Hey, let's poke around and see what we can find." You know, so i- give people the permission to try. Companies have run things like creating a very simple bot that just says, ask me about anything. And then frontline staff go on and they just start asking things and they get in responses and they're so excited. They just have the permission. The organization creates a culture of giving people the permission to try, right? When we were in school and we used to go to science labs, the joy was not about knowing the formula, it was about watching something bubble over, right? So start sharing your own clumsy experiences of using some of these things, and people will also get on board with you, and they'll begin to also explore. When it comes to anchoring to purpose, I believe that we need to frame AI not only as a productivity tool. Because when we do that, then we risk triggering fear. Because then people feel that, okay, this thing is more productive than I am. Am I next? But if we reframe it as a tool for amplifying meaningful work, which is what we discussed, then in fact we are restoring dignity in people's roles. This is when people feel like they're solving actual problems instead of just spending their time in trying to find them. If that makes sense, uh, basically. So anchor it to purpose and amplify. Let people know that you are really amplifying how they create meaningful value, or how they create value in a meaningful way in an organization. We can go on to the
There
next.
you go.
And
Yep.
these are the three questions leaders should ask. Uh, we have all these roadmaps and transformation strategies in our organizations, and they're great. We took a lot of time to create them, yes. But forget them for a second and maybe start with a few questions like this. What fears are we ignoring? Take, for example, the fear doesn't go away with facts, it goes away with safety. So you don't win trust by telling people not to be afraid. You win it by telling them to whisper their fears without punishment. If that's clear enough. That's basically where I think. And where can AI act as a teammate or not a threat? Not everything has to be disrupted, even though this technology has always been spoken of that way. Some things just needs to be less annoying. That's all. So ask people what tasks really drain their time and make them even feel exhausted when they come to work, and start there. That could be a great way of finding a use case that will help you solve uh, that will help you create value in your organization. And in your organization, as an example, maybe also ask yourself, do you reward curiosity or do you punish deviation? Because
Mm.
every organization says that they want innovation, but
Hmm.
then they penalize people who breaks the format. Somebody was asking, I think I wrote it down, um, the company is against generative AI, but they're probably also asking you to be more creative. And they don't want you, they say, use your own knowledge. But sometimes you also have to add to your knowledge to be able to create meaningful things. Um, so curiosity, in my opinion, is great, and it's a standard now for hiring great people and having great people on the team. So um, yeah,
Perfect.
so yeah, just in this age of AI, leadership, in my opinion, basically means guiding exploration and not having all the answers, right? So guide
Love it.
exploration, equip people in your organization, make it a team sport. Don't make it a test. Don't point it to people. Let them feel as part of it. Because in the end, AI doesn't make your people irrelevant. It actually empowers them.
What a perfect message to end on. Kwame, thank you so much. Um,
Thanks for having me.
I think you're going to be back again. I'm just throwing a couple things in the chat because I think I'm just going to close with a couple things that I think I heard today. Bold, not perfect. Toy, not test. We, not me. In other words, you got to share what you're learning, and then focus on ordinary, not extraordinary. So those are kind of the things that resonated for me. Please do connect with Kwame on LinkedIn. Please do check out BrainToy. They're doing fantastic work. Please do register to see us in 2 weeks, where we're going to talk about delegating to people, not to AI. And and it's funny how it all kind of wraps up in the end. So Kwame, thank you. Jenny, as always, thank you. And have a fantastic, what is now turning into a snowy day here in Calgary. So
Oh,
Oh
yeah.
no.
there you go. Take care, everybody. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much. You have a wonderful day.
Thanks, Craig. Thanks, Kwame. Thank you,
Thank you.
everybody.
Bye-bye.